Hello and welcome to Talking Telecoms Week. I'm Annie Turner, editor of Mobile Europe. I am delighted to be here with Sandeep Raithatha from Virgin Media O2 Business and Elhabiby from Red Hat to talk about what's driving private 5G networks. So this is a rapidly growing market and one that is potentially very important to network operators and their partners. Juniper Research predicts enterprises' spend on private networks will get near to 10 billion globally by 2028, and that's up from 1 billion this year. Maybe before we get really stuck into the discussion, we should clarify exactly what we mean by private 5G networks, because there are a number of different scenarios. So Sandeep, perhaps you could introduce yourself and say a little bit about your role and maybe help us clarify what we mean when we talk about private 5G networks.
Great. Well, thanks, Annie, for having us here. So, as you said, it's Sandeep Raithatha. I'm working at Virgin Media O2, leading on the development of 5G private networks and the solution and the delivery of them to our customers. So when I think about a 5G private network, you think about them as an ultra-secure mobile network, just really built for that business. The one that gives you some really ultra-fast connectivity between industrial machines, robots, and people. And then with that near zero delay, you can start to enable and automate operations, deliver true digital transformation for our customers. And so the way I think about it, another way to describe it is a bit like a mini mobile network. So you have the national network that your smartphones will connect to, and you use that to make calls and video calls and things like that. In this instance, a private network, you get your own 5G mobile network with its own mobile core and all the equipment that comes with it. And that gives you all that high bandwidth and the connectivity that is going to be great for some of those challenging environments, both in indoor and outdoor spaces, whether that's like a factory or a site. And of course, if you think about 5G private network, there are, as you said, different scenarios, or often, as I call them, different variants, different types of networks. You firstly have different types of technologies, and you have 4G private networks, and we've been delivering those to customers like British Sugar. And then, of course, 5G and 5G standalone, which is the latest version, and that's been started to see deployments of those take place as well. And those are here and available now. But as you said, the different variants you can think about are when customers might need to have private networks working across multiple sites. And I think that's what we sometimes call hybrid private networks, which could then work across a number of sites, and you could centralize some of that equipment that's put on the customer premise and actually bring that to the cloud. And that will allow you to share data securely across those sites more better. And of course, eventually you might have scenarios where you can leverage that national network that I talked about earlier. And that's where you could offer a slice of the network. And I think that's probably the third variant that we'll start to see. And that's where you can offer some dedicated control of the bandwidth and some of that quality. Maybe if you have more of a regional campus or a broader geography, you need to provide some really good quality coverage too. And that's where that could come to play as well.
So quite a lot of different variations, and presumably there are variations on each of them too, and different scenarios for different use cases and applications. I'm just wondering, Mo, if you please could introduce yourself, say a little bit about your role, and whether you've anything to add about those kinds of scenarios.
Yeah, thank you very much, Annie. So I'm Mo Elhabiby. I'm a senior telco specialized solution architect in Red Hat. And besides my role as a pre-sales architect for Red Hat's products, I advise customers on new technologies such as private 5G and Edge. And this is based on my actually previous experience as well, where I worked in Vodafone, and I was very lucky because I was one of the main contributors to the 5G strategy when I was in networks, and also the 5G strategy when I was in Vodafone Business. So I kind of seen it from both sides and seen the importance of actually getting into the private 5G as early as 2018 and 2019 when we were building that strategy. So I think Sandeep really actually summarized the situation very well. So there's nothing really to add here in terms of the types of private 5G, but perhaps this is a very good opportunity to talk about the role and the importance of having a platform that can suit any type of private 5G, so that actually it complements the bigger picture. The reason a platform is really important is because actually you want to standardize your deployments and your strategy in general around one platform that can host both the telecom workload for connectivity, but more importantly, all the use cases as well that you're hosting. And then that allows you not to end up with a management chaos when it comes to having so many use cases being deployed to different customers. Because if you leave it to application developers bringing in their own hardware for the customers, sometimes each one of them would bring in their own infrastructure, their own platform. And then as a private 5G provider, you might end up actually seeing too many of these variants. And you want to actually have control all over them, but it becomes too difficult at that point. So this is where actually a platform becomes very important. Another point that is really important as we go forward, and Sandeep touched on, we are in the era of disaggregation. So everything is being disaggregated more. This is our preferred type of architecture that we are building actually for our customers. So there are some elements that would be on the on-prem for the customer. There are some elements that we want to put on the telecom edge. There are some elements that we want to put on the cloud. More importantly, you don't want actually to develop the application and the use case multiple times for each of these scenarios. You want to develop the application once and then deploy everywhere consistently, not needing to go through all the security aspects of that application every time, not needing actually to do all the testing and strengthening required in order to make sure it's mission critical application running properly. And then actually the last point I want to touch on here is the automation angle. And the automation angle is key because the platform is an enabler for automation, and automation is gives you the ability actually to simplify the operations, simplify the managed service behind the private 5G, and allow you as a provider as well to offer out-of-the-box kind of predefined solutions to your customers that are already pre-certified and pre-integrated, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, but also give them something that they can understand that works on itself, has got all the provisioning capabilities, the zero-touch provisioning, the self-healing capabilities, so that actually the intervention work is really minimal. So this is the goal we are aiming towards. In order to make this market successful, because right now the challenge is, or what we hear from enterprise customers a lot, is that actually I'm very confident in dealing with Wi-Fi or LAN kind of networks. I've got the engineers that are able to do this, but I'm not that confident actually to work on a mobile technology with a spectrum, with SIM card management, with radio network design and optimization. It becomes very complex for me. How can I find someone who can make that simple? This is what we are talking about here, that the platform can enable.
Okay, so replicate is a really, really key element of this. Okay, thank you. So what's driving the market? Where are the opportunities? Sandeep, you touched already on a couple of customers. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on what's driving the market more broadly.
Sure. So I think when you think about 5G private networks, they do have the potential to revolutionize industries, transform the way we live and work, and enable all these new exciting possibilities we've not seen before. And that can be across a whole wide range of sectors. As I mentioned, the example of the work we've done with British Sugar, and that's in food manufacturing, deploying a private network to provide better connectivity and automation there. Or more recently with the South London Maudsley Hospital Trust, helping clinicians have better access to update patient records and track and monitor assets with one of the first 5G connected hospitals here in the UK as well. But I think it's also important to not get too carried away or think about taking a step back from the technology lens and really thinking and not getting too carried away. So not thinking about tech for the tech's sake and thinking 5G is going to be the answer for everything. And so often, I think it's always best to start with, what is the business problem that you're trying to solve? And then from that, for example, is it going to be trying to improve your worker health and safety? Are you going to be trying to drive better operational efficiencies in your production line? Or are you trying to drive more automation or resilience for longer term planning? And based on some of those types of business problems, you can then start thinking about what are those right solutions. And often those solutions will be quite wide and varying. And those solutions then might need or will be enabled by a private network. Some of those might be 4G, others will be 5G and a new 5G standalone as well. So I think that's the way you've got to think about it. There's plenty of sectors and opportunities where 5G and private networks can have a role to play. It's always important to start with the business problem. Which ones are the most compelling problems? Because those compelling problems are really what's driving the market take-up and interest as it is now.
So, Sandeep, you talked at the beginning about the different sorts of 5G private networks. And I'm just wondering whether you see that as a progression, a chronological progression, or whether you think they're going to all kind of coexist. And, what's made me really think about that is you talking about what business problem are we trying to solve for the customer?
And yeah, I think that's a great question and a debate that's happening across the industry. I think everyone acknowledges there are going to be different types of private networks, whether it's those dedicated on-premise available here and now, future variants of hybrid hosted network slicing. And if you think about it, it really does depend on the customer. All the different types of customers we've been engaging with, and the vertical sectors, as I mentioned, whether that's transport or manufacturing or healthcare, all have a slightly different set of requirements. So if you have a requirement where you need really complete control and resilience and reliability, if you're going to be using it to take over and monitor and manage your production line for your manufacturing, which is your key part of your business, then a dedicated private network is probably going to be the best solution here and now today. If you've got multiple sites and you want to process and share data, let's say if you're monitoring something and using, let's say, AI and computer vision, and you want to learn from different sites and processing information centrally and taking action more centrally, then a hybrid private network where you might start to centralize some of those functions, bring more data centrally to make those decisions might make sense. And of course, I think in the examples where you might have requirements where you're deploying networks more nationally, so where you have people roaming nationally to monitor assets, you have field workers working in different geographies. A private network in one region is not going to really make the difference, or it's going to really help in a scalable way. And that's where network slicing will come to play. So each of those verticals and some of those sectors will all have slightly different requirements, and that's where I think you'll see some exciting and different take-ups and usage of those over time as well.
I totally.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I also think thinking about the verticals in the way we have is maybe a bit misleading, or it doesn't help us, because just thinking about, you're talking about healthcare, needing a super secure network, maybe for a hospital because of patient data and confidentiality is one thing, and then a completely different sort of private network might be required for remote monitoring and remote consultations. And the same for the police, or lots of other examples you can think of. So you might need several different approaches within a single organization, depending on which bit it is and what the needs are.
Yeah, I think so. I think even within the vertical, as you said, probably generalizing it too high at a high level wouldn't fit for the right solution. But, within the sub-vertical, as you said, within healthcare, there are going to be multiple trusts, the GP practices, people that need connectivity closer to the home. Each of those might have a slightly separate solution. And that's where I think you will start to see over time those private networks being able to connect and talk to each other in some way or form as well, where the business driver needs it, right? So where you might have an asset that you're monitoring from a private network that might be moving around the UK more nationally, you're going to need to find a way to track that holistically, right? So I think that there'll be ways and solutions we'll start to see that deal with those challenges.
Mo, I'm sorry, I sort of cut across you. Sorry.
No.
So I'm just saying, you clearly have your thoughts on this too.
I see. I just want to echo Sandeep. I think he absolutely hit the nail on the head. The different types of private networks, I believe they would coexist together. It's not an evolution of types. Mm-hmm. So when we put together, like for our customers, that we have dedicated private networks, we have the hybrid kind of private networks, as Sandeep mentioned, and then network slicing. It's not really that we are putting an evolution story here. We are putting a coexistence story where the use case really dictates what type of solution that you would enable for you the use case. And I think, just to re-explain, that I think the dedicated one, for example, positions itself naturally for some verticals like manufacturing, like mining, like ports, just purely because a dedicated private 5G gives the customer the confidence that they control that whole operations, right? The data doesn't have to leave the premises. It's full sovereignty for the customer of data. And then at the same time, this allows the customer to have their own SLAs behind that network, so they can set whatever they want. They are not reliant dependent on anyone else, right? So that's one type. The other type, for example, when it comes to autonomous vehicles, and we want to enable an autonomous vehicle on the motorway, this becomes then more challenging for a private 5G dedicated one to cover that motorway, right? So now we are talking about, okay, let's leverage the assets of a mobile operator. They already cover motorways through their existing 4G and 5G networks. We can use that in order actually either to provide like what they call local breakout of traffic into actually processing units that can take this data and compute it from the cars, or like network slicing approach, which we are talking about and discussing right now, how we can deploy that. But this is actually, as I said, a use case kind of conversation that we start with, then get into actually the right type and the right connectivity solution for it.
It helps if you unmute yourself first. How much do you think network operators are going to benefit from this growth in private 5G networks? Sandeep, maybe?
Yeah, so I think definitely going to be an area where we will see growth, in addition to the core business that operators will be offering today, whether it's continuing investing in their fixed and mobile for their customers in the business market. Where I see the opportunity, as you said, and as the analyst shared earlier from Juniper, there's 1 billion spent today. There's a significant compound annual growth rates from now to 2030. I think it's the operators investing early, engaging with customers, providing those proof points will be the ones that benefit. And of course, I think it's having that understanding that it's just not one operator or one provider that's going to create an end-to-end solution. So it's important that we as an industry build the right partnerships and have that right trusted and reliable ecosystem so we can deliver a complete solution to our customers as well.
Okay, so I don't know, Mo, what do you think needs to happen for network operators to really make the most of this opportunity?
Yeah, see, I might be biased because I worked for network operators before, right? But I think network operators are really well positioned into this journey, purely because network operators are technology agnostic. So they have a wide portfolio of options that they offer, right? So they can be trusted in that perspective. They are not really pushing a technology for the sake of selling that technology. They really want to help the customer enable the use case with the right technology behind it, whether it's private 5G or maybe something else. It might be a public network 4G SIM card, or it might be Wi-Fi or whatever. So they wouldn't really come with an angle where they are trying to push a product, I think. The other angle is actually, obviously, mobile operators have had more than 20 years or 30 years of managing complex networks, and they are very well known to provide that level of reliability. And talking to enterprises need that level of trust. They want a mobile operator sitting on the table, managing this and having a say on what they are getting, because they are the most experienced people in this area, right? And then the last point I want to touch on here is the scalability. So we all know that 5G is a journey. Some people call it a marathon rather than a sprint, right? So you can start with one place and one use case, right? And most of the companies are starting to take this approach, like let's do a trial, let's do a pilot somewhere with one use case. But very quickly you can realize the benefits and can convince the business to expand. And then you start looking into other use cases. And back to the point that we talked about, having these types of private 5G and different types of connectivity is key for scalability, because maybe your first use case was just actually dictating the need for a dedicated private networks, and you get that from someone. But then maybe the second one requires really network slicing or the public network connectivity to be in place. And then actually you don't need to change the provider, and you don't need to actually have two different sets of networks that you need to manage at the end as a customer. So this allows them the scalability needed and allows them to go through a journey with someone who understands, who knows, who manages this complexity for a very long time and can be trusted for it.
So you started off, I guess, talking about do it once and then replicate. And I guess this is kind of do it once and expand on it, really.
100%.
And keep an eye to build on it. Sandeep, what's your thinking? What's your thinking about next steps?
Yeah, when I think about some of the key next steps, I think firstly, some of those partnerships are going to be critical, especially as we said, mobile network operators have some amazing experience over years and decades of deploying covering and enabling, connecting millions and millions of customers. Where I think there is opportunity for partnerships is when the operational technology in those industry verticals we talked about, whether it's ports, factories, hospitals, comes together with the information technology, which, you know, the operator will be used to. And it's how do you bring those together and solve and manage that complexity and integration, and partnership and support is going to be key there. To Mo's point, my second area I think is key is how do you make this scalable and repeatable, right? So I think there are two approaches. One is the land and expand, starting with one use case and then evolving and delivering that further. The second is, as you get to see those use cases and opportunities be validated in the market, how can you make them repeatable and easy to be deployed and then scaled? So, you know, you're offering a great managed service, which is tried, tested, and is really solving that customer's problem, making them more efficient, better, and more automated. And then, of course, it's continuing. Then the last part to drive that journey and scale the next steps is to leverage that national network where we can and start thinking about how we can offer those future capabilities, whether that's, you know, network slicing or exposing the network through APIs, and really starting to create some differentiation as well for the mobile operators.
Can you just talk a little bit more, maybe, Sandeep, about APIs? Because there's been a lot of publicity and a lot of interest in the GSMA's Open Gateway initiative. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on the importance that will play.
So I'd say the GSMA Open Gateway is definitely an exciting opportunity. There's already so many operators engaged, and it's also great to see the hyperscalers on board as well. And what's really important as well is there's acknowledgement that it's a multi-sided business model. So, you know, you're going to have aggregators, you're going to have hyperscalers, and you're going to have software developers all involved in helping expose, you know, the networks that we've created and then make them create some really compelling applications. So I think, you know, you could start to see in the longer term capabilities where you could expose via APIs the ability to activate a network slice or to create some dedicated or prioritized service on the network through, you know, quality of service as well. So I think the opportunities in the longer term are going to be quite exciting, and it's over the coming months and years when we start to see these trials and pilots take place where we can validate these the technology and the commercial model as well.
Okay, and Mo, I think I'm going to leave the last word to you. I was going to ask you about the role of open source in this, because we're talking about standards and scale and replication.
Yeah. So listening to Sandeep, I think I want to echo what Sandeep said about the partners. Partners are key, right? And being a little bit biased here, you might say, I truly think that Red Hat is very well positioned to actually work together on this journey with our customers, our partners. I mean, Red Hat works with 90% of the Fortune 500 companies across the world. So we really deploy industrial kind of applications every single day. We refactor applications to become cloud native and modernized, and then we deploy them consistently across any infrastructure through our platforms and automation capabilities. More importantly, actually, we have a massive partnership ecosystem, and we work with all the key players as well in the telecom industry, but as well as in the software industry. So we are really like kind of in the middle between both in this journey, and that makes us in a unique position because we know both very well. We have got great relationship with each very well, actually, and we build these blueprints every day. We have an engineering team of more than 300 people working every day on blueprints with telecom vendor providers like Nokia's, Ericsson's, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, working as well with the software developers and the application providers. So this is what we this is our DNA. This is what we do. But more importantly, our productization model is very innovative because it's based on open source. This is what I want to get to, because all what we are talking about today is innovation. And innovation we believe that innovation comes from upstream communities. So we empower these upstream communities, we lead projects there, and we help actually developing the right products based on market feedback, based on feedback from operators, based on feedback from technology leaders in healthcare, in manufacturing, in transport. And then actually we productize these kind of developments, strengthening them, making them enterprise grade when we see the value for our customers into our product portfolio. So this is what we do on a daily basis, but then more importantly, it's open, it's standard, it's available for everyone to use. So this is what we want to actually leverage, and we want to provide to our customers so that they are always having the latest technology available for their own end customers when needed.
Okay, yeah, nothing beats direct feedback straight from customers. Mo and Sandeep, I'd like to thank you both very much for your insights and your time.
Thank
Our
you.
pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.